In just 42 seconds, one of music's most legendary icons went from sitting comfortably on a talk show couch to storming off the set in absolute fury. What started as a conversation about celebrating a remarkable career turned into one of the most explosive on-air meltdowns daytime television has ever witnessed. With Jennifer Hudson pushing buttons she had no business touching and Chaka Khan reminding everyone exactly why you don't disrespect a queen. If you want daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals and the confrontations they don't want you to see, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. Last night's episode of The Jennifer Hudson Show was supposed to be a celebration. Chaka Khan, the woman they call the Queen of Funk, was there to talk about her decades in the music industry, her influence on generations of artists, and her continued relevance in today's music scene. The audience was packed with fans who'd grown up listening to her hits, and the energy in the studio was electric. But what nobody expected was that Jennifer Hudson, who usually keeps things light and fun with her guests, was about to cross a line that would turn admiration into absolute chaos. The interview started off smoothly enough. Jennifer welcomed Chaka to the stage with a big smile and a warm hug, and the audience erupted in applause. Chaka looked stunning in a vibrant outfit that screamed confidence and style, her signature wild hair perfectly styled, and her presence commanding the room the moment she sat down. Jennifer kicked things off by talking about Chaka's incredible voice and how she'd influenced so many singers over the years, including Jennifer herself. "You know, Chaka, I have to say, growing up, your voice was everything to me," Jennifer said, leaning forward in her chair. Every Woman was one of those songs that just made me want to sing, you know? It showed me what power really sounds like." Chaka smiled graciously, nodding her head. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means a lot coming from you. You've got an incredible voice yourself, and I've always respected what you do." The exchange seemed genuine and sweet, and the audience clapped along, clearly enjoying watching two powerhouse vocalists share mutual respect. Jennifer asked about Chaka's early days in the music industry, how she got her start, and what it was like being a black woman breaking barriers in the funk and soul genres during the 70s. Chaka spoke eloquently about the challenges she'd faced, the racism and sexism that tried to hold her back, and how she'd refused to let anyone dim her light. "I had to fight for everything," Chaka explained, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "Nobody was going to hand me anything. I had to prove that I belonged in those spaces, that my voice mattered, that my music mattered, and I did it on my own terms." Jennifer nodded along, but there was something in her expression that seemed a little off. Maybe it was the way she kept glancing at her notes, or the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. But some people in the audience later said they sensed the shift before it even happened. Jennifer's next question came out of nowhere and hit like a freight train. "So, Chaka, I've got to ask you something that I think a lot of people are curious about," Jennifer said, her tone suddenly more pointed. "There's been a lot of talk over the years about some of the younger artists today, you know, people like Beyoncé, Ariana Grande, even myself, and how we've been compared to you or inspired by you. But I've also heard some comments from you in the past that seemed, I don't know, maybe a little dismissive of what we're doing today. Do you think the new generation of artists really measures up to what you and your peers were doing back in the day?" The room went quiet. You could feel the tension creep in like a cold draft. Chaka's expression shifted from warm and open to guarded in an instant. She tilted her head slightly, studying Jennifer's face, as if trying to figure out where this was coming from. "Dismissive?" Chaka repeated slowly. "I don't know what you're talking about, Jennifer. I've never been dismissive of anybody's talent. I've always supported artists who work hard and respect the craft." Jennifer didn't back down. In fact, she leaned in harder, her voice taking on an edge that hadn't been there before. "Well, I mean, there was that interview a few years ago where you said something about how music today doesn't have the same soul, the same authenticity. And I think a lot of people, including some of us who are out here working just as hard, took that personally." Chaka's eyes narrowed. "First of all, if you're going to quote me correctly. What I said was that the industry has changed, that it's more focused on image and marketing than it is on actual musicianship and vocal ability. And I stand by that. That's not a dig at anyone specifically. That's just the truth about how things have shifted." "But don't you think that's kind of unfair?" Jennifer pressed. "I mean, a lot of us are out here singing our hearts out, putting in the work, and we're still being compared to the legends like you and told we don't measure up. Doesn't that feel like you're gatekeeping what it means to be a real artist? The word gatekeeping hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Chaka's jaw tightened, and you could see her entire demeanor shift. The gracious, warm woman who'd walked onto the stage was gone, replaced by someone who was clearly done playing nice. Gatekeeping? Chaka said, her voice rising slightly. Let me tell you something, Jennifer. I spent 50 damn years building my career from the ground up. I didn't have social media. I didn't have streaming. I didn't have a TV show to boost my profile. I had my voice and my work ethic, and I earned every single thing I have. So don't you dare sit here and accuse me of gatekeeping when all I've ever done is speak the truth about this industry. Jennifer shifted in her seat, clearly not expecting Chaka to come back at her so forcefully. But instead of de-escalating, she doubled down. I'm not trying to attack you, Chaka. I'm just saying that maybe the way you talk about the new generation comes across as condescending. Like, we're all out here trying to honor the legends who came before us, but it feels like some of you don't want to give us credit for what we're accomplishing. Chaka laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. It was sharp and bitter. Credit? You want credit? For what, Jennifer? For having a team of producers and writers and vocal coaches do half the work for you? For lip-syncing at your concerts? For relying on autotune to fix your mistakes? The audience gasped. This was getting ugly fast, and everyone could feel it. Jennifer's face flushed, and her eyes flashed with anger. Excuse me? I don't lip-sync, and I damn sure don't use autotune. I won an Oscar for my singing, Chaka. I think I've proven myself. Oh, here we go with the Oscar. Chaka shot back, waving her hand dismissively. You won an Oscar for playing a role in a movie, Jennifer. That's acting as much as it is singing. Don't act like that makes you the standard for vocal greatness. I've been singing live, night after night, for decades, without the safety net of a studio or a film set. That's the difference between us. Jennifer's face was turning red now, and her voice was getting louder. You know what, Chaka? I invited you on this show to celebrate you, to give you a platform to talk about your legacy. And you're sitting here disrespecting me and everyone else who's worked hard to build their own careers. Maybe that's why people say you're difficult to work with. The second those words left Jennifer's mouth, you could see she regretted them. But it was too late. Chaka's face went from angry to absolutely furious. She stood up from her chair, and the audience went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Difficult? Chaka said, her voice shaking with rage. You want to call me difficult? Let me tell you something, little girl. I've been called difficult my whole career because I refuse to let people like you disrespect me or my work. I'm difficult because I don't kiss ass. I'm difficult because I speak my mind. And right now, I'm telling you that you're out of line. Jennifer stood up too, clearly trying to regain control of the situation, but it was slipping through her fingers. Chaka, I think you're overreacting. I was just asking a question that's been on people's minds. Overreacting? Chaka snapped. No, sweetheart, I'm reacting exactly how I should. You brought me on this show under the pretense of honoring me, and instead, you ambushed me with some petty bullshit because you're in your feelings about something I said years ago. That's not professional. That's not respectful. And I don't have to stand here and take it. Jennifer's voice was shaking now, a mix of anger and defensiveness. I wasn't ambushing you, Chaka. I was trying to have an honest conversation. But if you can't handle being asked tough questions, then maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. That was the final straw. Chaka took a step back from the couch and pointed a finger at Jennifer, her voice booming through the studio. Don't you ever tell me what I can and can't handle? I've handled more in my career than you'll ever face in yours. I've dealt with racism, sexism, exploitation, and every other damn thing this industry could throw at me. And I'm still here. But I will not stand here and let some talk show host who's been famous for a fraction of the time I have lecture me about how to conduct myself. Jennifer's eyes were watering now, but whether it was from anger or hurt, it was hard to tell. You know what, Chaka? If that's how you feel, then maybe you should leave. Chaka let out a harsh laugh. Oh, don't worry. I'm already gone. The tension in the room was suffocating. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every second of the disaster unfolding on stage. Members of the production crew were frozen, unsure whether to intervene or let it play out. The audience sat in stunned silence, their eyes darting between the two women, like they were watching a car crash in slow motion. But Chaka wasn't done yet. Before she walked off, she turned back to Jennifer one more time, her voice cold and cutting. "You know what your problem is, Jennifer? You've gotten so comfortable being on this side of the interview that you've forgotten what it's like to be a real artist. You've forgotten what it takes to earn respect, not just demand it because you've got a TV show and a nice smile. I came here tonight to support you, to be gracious and kind, and you threw it back in my face. So congratulations, you got your viral moment. I hope it was worth it." Jennifer opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. She just stood there, visibly shaken, as Chaka turned on her heel and walked toward the edge of the stage. A producer rushed over, trying to stop her, putting a hand on her arm and whispering something. But Chaka pulled away sharply. "Get your hands off me," Chaka said firmly. "I'm leaving, and nobody's going to stop me." The producer stepped back, hands raised in surrender, and Chaka continued walking. The audience was still silent, some people's mouths hanging open in shock, others whispering to each other in disbelief. This was not how anyone had expected the night to go. This was supposed to be a feel-good moment, a celebration of one of music's greatest legends, and instead, it had turned into an absolute nightmare. As Chaka reached the side of the stage, she paused for just a moment and looked back at the audience. There was something almost regal about the way she carried herself. Even in the midst of all the chaos, she gave a slight nod, as if acknowledging the people who'd come to see her, and then she disappeared behind the curtain. Back on stage, Jennifer was left standing alone, her chest rising and falling rapidly as she tried to compose herself. The cameras were still on her, capturing every second of her struggle to regain control. She looked at the audience, then at the crew, and you could see the panic starting to set in. This was her show, her brand, and it was falling apart in real time. I didn't mean for that to happen," Jennifer stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was just trying to have an honest conversation. But the damage was done. The audience wasn't clapping. They weren't cheering. Some of them were shaking their heads in disappointment. Others were already pulling out their phones, no doubt ready to share what they'd just witnessed with the world. This wasn't going to stay contained to the studio. This was going to explode online, and everyone in that room knew it." One of the producers finally stepped onto the stage, whispering urgently into Jennifer's ear. She nodded slowly, wiping at her eyes, and then turned back to the audience with a forced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We're going to take a quick break," she announced, her voice shaky. "We'll be right back." But as the cameras cut and the stage lights dimmed, everyone knew there was no coming back from this. The Queen of Funk had been disrespected on live television, and she'd made it clear that she wasn't going to tolerate it. She'd walked off that stage with her head held high, leaving Jennifer Hudson to deal with the aftermath of a confrontation that never should have happened. Backstage, Chaka was already gathering her things, her team surrounding her and trying to calm her down. But she didn't need calming. She was angry, yes, but she was also completely justified in her anger. She'd been blindsided by someone she'd thought was going to honor her, and instead, she'd been put on the defensive and forced to fight for her dignity. "That was some bullshit," Chaka muttered to one of her team members as she grabbed her coat. "I should have known better than to come on this damn show." Her team nodded in agreement, clearly just as upset as she was. They'd all seen it coming the moment Jennifer asked that first pointed question. They'd watched as the interview went from celebratory to confrontational, and they'd been powerless to stop it. All they could do now was support Chaka and get her out of there as quickly as possible. Back in the studio, the audience was buzzing with conversation. People were leaning over to their neighbors, whispering about what they'd just seen, trying to process the shock of it all. Some were defending Chaka, saying she'd been right to stand up for herself. Others were defending Jennifer, claiming she'd just been trying to ask the tough questions that needed to be asked. But one thing everyone agreed on was that this was going to be talked about for a long time. The producers were in a panic, huddled together and trying to figure out how to salvage the rest of the show. Do they bring out another guest? Do they cut the segment entirely? Do they address what just happened or pretend it didn't? There were no good options, and the clock was ticking. Meanwhile, Jennifer was sitting in her chair backstage, her head in her hands, as her own team tried to console her. She was crying now, the weight of what had just happened finally hitting her. This was supposed to be her show, her space, where she could connect with guests and share meaningful conversations. But she'd pushed too hard, asked the wrong questions, and now one of music's greatest legends had walked out on her. "I didn't mean for it to go like that," Jennifer said through her tears. "I just wanted to have a real conversation." Her team exchanged glances, unsure of what to say. They knew she'd crossed a line, but pointing that out now wasn't going to help. All they could do was try to support her and figure out how to move forward from this disaster. Out in the parking lot, Chaka Khan was climbing into her car, her face still set in a hard expression. She didn't look back at the studio, didn't give it a second thought. As far as she was concerned, she'd said what needed to be said, and now she was moving on. She'd been in this industry long enough to know that some battles were worth fighting, and this was one of them. As her car pulled away from the studio, Chaka finally allowed herself to relax slightly, letting out a long breath. It had been an intense night, one she hadn't expected when she'd agreed to do the show, but she didn't regret walking out. She'd stood up for herself, defended her legacy, and refused to let anyone diminish what she'd accomplished over her 50-year career. And as the city lights blurred past her window, Chaka Khan knew one thing for certain. She was still the queen of funk, and nobody, not even Jennifer Hudson, was going to make her forget that.